Won't you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes?
We got Hal from Manchester. How are you?
How you doing?
Good.
And I kind of described what I wanted to do to your guy a little wrong. My argument is about Chinese symbols and how they. I don't want to say they prove Genesis, but I want to say like it's evidence of a common source.
Okay, so you're claiming that Chinese symbols predate the Bible and were influencing the Bible? Is that where you're going?
No, I'm saying like that's I'm at a loss of words here. I'm not really sure how to explain this.
I think I can help you. I think I can help you. Chinese.
Right, I'll just go over it with you, and you'll get what I'm saying, I guess.
I think I already know what you're saying. Chinese characters are made up of a bunch of different symbols. It's not a phonetic language like English or an alphabet like that. It's a bunch of pictures that symbolize other things. And so there are people who say, if you look at, for example, the Chinese character for devil, it includes sub-characters within that character that are like garden and tempter and that type of stuff. And I know the Answers in Genesis site has this up there saying that this demonstrates that these 4,000-year-old characters, that people in China were aware of the creation story. Is that what your point was?
They were aware of the Jewish creation story, you're saying?
Yeah, that's the argument, that the nature of these characters for the word for devil is such that the person who created that character was aware of the Jewish creation story. Is that?
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, I kind of misinterpreted what you were saying at first. Okay, but
so this is a question to you. Is this what you were talking about?
That's what you were talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what? I mean, there's three possible.
I think it's interesting.
There's three possible explanations. Either somebody who invented that character in the ancient Chinese writings was familiar with the Jewish creation myth and wanted to pass that along. That kind of makes sense, that you make a character that relates to the story. That's kind of the way Chinese works, although I'm not an expert. So that's one possibility, that the person who created that character was familiar with those stories. The other possibility is that people are seeing patterns in those characters, and that Chinese language in particular lends itself to finding patterns of words and other words. I'd say that that's also viable, considering that you can walk into any marketing department in China, and what they end up doing is twisting and turning their characters into new fonts so that you portray more message and people read more into it than what the actual character's for. And the third possibility is that the Genesis account, the Jewish creation myth, is true, and that the God of the Jews decided to reveal this to a Chinese guy as well. Now, of the three, which is the least likely?
You see, now, if you ask me, the last option is the most likely, because
why?
This is going along with ancient Chinese, and these symbols supposedly predate any Jewish civilization.
Well, how is that possible? Doesn't that contradict your Bible? Wasn't the Jewish civilization the first?
Well, no, the Jewish civilization didn't always exist. That's something that came along after.
No. My next question would be okay, if somehow this creation story influenced China somehow, ancient China, what else you got except a character?
No, we don't go do an okay and go on to that.
No, okay.
The reason is you're saying that it's more likely of those three possibilities that a God did it, and then you're saying that it's because the character predates Jewish culture. Well, that's in direct violation with what the Bible has to say. I mean, Adam and Eve, the formation.
This is what I'm saying. The Hebrews did not exist at the
so
first time
what?
of creation.
So what?
They existed.
So what? The story did.
It's a little coincidental that the Chinese characters existed before the Jews even existed.
No. Okay, I apologize, Hal. You're being an idiot about this, and here's why. The story existed. If the story was true or not, the story existed. Are you saying that the story didn't exist for the Hebrews until after The Chinese invented the character? Okay. List any of the similarities between, for example, Jesus and the hundreds of other messianic claims, or the Athanasius, or not Athanasius, Apollonius, or the similarities between. There are stories that have those similarities. You have not heard of any of those?
Well, I mean, I have heard of Apollonius. I even remember watching this National Geographic special on him.
So what reason would you have for rejecting either the Apollonius stories or the Jesus stories?
Well, I have my personal reasons for believing.
Yeah, okay, we're done. We're done, Hal.
To be convinced by it.
We're done.
But,
we're done, because you won't argue honestly. You just went straight to, oh, I have my personal reasons, which tells me you don't give a damn about whether or not something's true. And we've already tried over and over again.
It's just that it's a long story, and I don't think you guys really want to waste all your time listening to it.
Probably not. I'm interested in actual truth, and somebody who can actually demonstrate truth. And I don't think that your story is going to get there if you began by talking about Chinese characters and how it's so unlikely that these Chinese characters could have come about by any other reason than that the story is true and that God dictated or influenced the Chinese people with the Jewish creation myth. I mean.
Well, if I can find evidence in support of another theory, this is the one I'm going to default to for now.
Oh, now we get to the crux. You're saying, I'm going to accept this until I find better evidence of something else.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you not see the problem with that?
No, because I think the circumstantial evidence in support of this is pretty sufficient for now.
I'll tell you the problem with that. I'm going to accept that lightning bolts come from Zeus until I find out better information. I'm going to accept that bumps on people's foreheads tell me what's going on inside their heads until I get better information. I'm going to accept that diseases are caused by demons and devils and we need to engage in bloodletting until I find better information. The problem is that you've accepted an answer without sufficient evidence, and you're willing to be wrong about it while running around thinking you're right, and that makes you an idiot. That means that you don't care about what's actually true. You care about assuaging your discomfort with not knowing. You are so uncomfortable by not having an answer that you're willing to latch on to whatever seems most intuitively reasonable to you and comforts you. And that's not a pathway to truth at all.
I personally don't see a problem in just assuming one answer is true until evidence is presented to suggest otherwise.
Yeah. I know you don't, and I don't know why you don't. And I wish I could find out, because we could fix the whole world as soon as we figure out why you don't. I can't explain it. I can't explain it.
Scientists all over the place do the same thing.
What?
Scientists all over the place do the same thing.
No, they freaking don't. Do not pretend.
One huge example is the origin of the Big Bang.
Hal,
A lot of scientists will say the
shut the
multiverse
fuck
is
up,
the origin
Hal.
of the Big
Let me
Bang, even
finish.
though there's no evidence of a multiverse.
Hal,
do
not pretend that what you're doing is even remotely comparable to science. Science doesn't just latch on to whatever feels good and then hopes maybe later on we'll find the truth. Science gives explanations and doesn't assert absolute certainty at any point. And what they do is they give the best explanation that is supported by evidence, that is subject to peer review. They build models that actually make testable predictions that prove useful. You're not doing anything remotely like that. And the fact that you have deluded yourself to thinking that science does this too is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. You not only don't care whether or not something's true, you have poisoned your own mind to the extent that you have no pathway to understanding how to find out if something's true. And the one thing that can be used to get us as close as possible to a true understanding, you denigrate it to being the equivalent of the asinine guesswork burden-shifting thing that you've just engaged in. We're done, Hal. Completely. We're moving on. Science just guesses until it finds a new answer.
No.
Sorry.
Science follows where the evidence leads. And there's human error in science, but it gets corrected over time. In the long term, it's a reliable way of finding answers about the world.
There's just no assertion of absolute certainty in science.
No.